Well, we start with the paradox that there have been countless ingenious technological innovations for the last 200 years, and the last 50 years especially, that are designed to save us time. Remarkable inventions. Somehow the result has been that nobody has any time left. Why? What is that all about? Wherever I speak to people and I ask them, how many of you have lots of free time on your hands? Almost nobody, not even children. So that's why I called it the new poverty. We're a time-poor society. We have lots of things, and maybe, although much less now, maybe lots of money, but lots of time, no. So why? What's happened to us? Why are we always feeling pressed for time and agitated about it? And that's the problem is, how do I do everything? How do I live up to all my commitments? How do I get things done? How do I handle all the interesting projects or all the obligations or all the, how do I squeeze it all in and still have meaningful time left for my family, for whatever? So it's a great suffering, this problem of time in our culture and throughout the modern world, I think. And then the mystery of time is very much deeper than, in a way. It goes back since any recorded history, since people have been thinking about the meaning and purpose of their lives, why they're on Earth, what they're supposed to be doing, who they are, who we are, and above all, why do we live, why do we die? What is this? What is time at all is a huge mystery. Nobody knows what it is, really. And yet, it's our life. And it's a mysterious question. What is this thing that we have beginning, middle, end? We come into being, we pass out of being. Everything, more or less, has that property of being temporal, in time. Except, so they say, the eternal, whatever that is, which we can talk about. So the mystery of time is the mystery of our life, our human life. Who we are, it's connected with who we are, what we're meant to be. Why do we live? Why do we die? Why do we suffer? There is not a single deep question that is not inhabited by the question of time. So we have these two sides, the problem and what I'm calling the mystery. The problem is something to be solved, to be worked with, to be ingenious about, to be fixed, as every people try to do. There's all kinds of time-saving devices. There's schedules and plannings and how to schedule your time, how to economize your time, et cetera, et cetera. This is a problem. Problems are meant to be solved, but mysteries are meant to be experienced, to be pondered, to be lived with, to let the mystery come into the human heart, the human soul. The culture, our culture in general, although this is probably true in a way of every culture, every society, but our culture has a unique way of looking at what a human being is. And I don't think it started out that way, but somehow we've come to believe that we're mainly people who need pleasure in our life, need things to give us comfort, pleasure, need certain achievements to give us a sense of self-respect. Money, for example, to give us a sense of value and self-respect. We need physical well-being, and then not only just health in some kind of a normal sense, but appearance. We need to appear a certain way. need to, in other words, what the Buddhists call the desire nature, the satisfactions of desires, is for many of us the meaning of happiness. And so, to satisfy desires, we have an industry, a capitalism, an economic, not just needs, but desires. And so one of the things we have to understand about the problem of time is the proliferation of desires. There's a very big difference in principle between needs and desires. You could say physical needs are rather simple in a way, but that doesn't mean we should live sort of with fig leaves around us or something. It means there's a certain kind of need that corresponds to something essential in human nature, and it's not just physical survival, although that has been overemphasized very much, but it's also many things about the finer aspects of the human psyche that we need to cultivate. We'll come into that later. But then we have to recognize that the economic principle of our society has been the creation of desire in recent years, in not just satisfaction of need and desire, and that's one thing, but in order to keep the particular economy moving, more and more products have to be invented, more and more things have to be bought, more and more desires have to be created. So we've become a society of consumers that can never get enough, because the desire nature, as the great teachings of the past tell us, the desire nature is never satisfied for very long. The more it gets, the more it wants. And it's not that there were people twirling their mustaches behind the scenes saying, how can we make life more and more meaningless while we're making it seem more and more meaningful? But that's more or less what happened. You see thousands of toothpaste or 100 kinds of cat food, or even cats' desire nature has to be taken into account now. But when you think of all the products that are being offered that make people, that are marketed in a way that make young people and older people and all of us feel safer, more beautiful, more lovable, more et cetera, better than the other guy. This is an industry that's feeding off, provoking more and more desires. And that eats up a lot of our time, getting things, doing things, trying to get more and more, trying to work more and more, et cetera, et cetera. There's a symbol of that in the Tibetan tradition. It's called a hungry ghost. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there are many levels of beings. Several animals are one, and devils are another, and gods are another, and human beings are very central. But there's one called the hungry ghost. Hungry ghosts are like phantoms with a big belly, and their limbs and their head are floating, sort of hardly connected, but they all around, and they have a big belly and a little pinprick mouth, and they're always hungry, they're always eating, and the more they eat, the hungrier they get, and each time they eat, when it goes down, it burns fiercely, so that I'm craving to eat more and more, and the more I eat, the more hungry I am, and yet each time I eat, it burns. And that, in a way, couldn't be a better summation of, I would say, the last 50, 60 years of capitalism and what it was. Not that I'm against capitalism, but so that takes a lot of time. And that means because it's based on the principle of how we look at a human being. Now, another aspect of how we look at human beings in this general culture of things, and this is true beyond all cultures in its own way, but here it's particularly pronounced, is that human beings, it is not recognized very much in our society, in our world, that human beings have an inner world and an outer world. We have a side of ourselves that needs to act manifest, to take care of our family, to earn our living, to accomplish things, to invent, to travel, to live, to take care of the earth, to do all sorts of things which human beings can really do remarkably. But there's this inner part, and it's not just the psychological desires and things, but there's an inner life within us which we have lost touch with entirely. And we sometimes experience it, as I said before, in moments of danger, moments of crisis, moments of extraordinary beauty, moments of great love, moments, say, when your child is just born, moments of connection with the loved one, or moments of just sometimes just, you don't know why, but they appear, these moments of what you might call the real or the higher or the real self appears. There's a real self inside there, a real I that's covered over. It hasn't been born. It's not able to appear. And that's our real identity, is connected to that. The thing we call ourselves is been culturally conditioned. It's not that it's bad altogether. It's just a cultural fact, a cultural product of an interaction of outside influences in my own mind and emotional nature and body. That cultural, not a fiction, but that cultural psychological product, you can call it ego if you like, but that has so many loaded meanings nowadays. But it's the surface self, if you like, that we need. We damn well need it in our life. It's important. But there's this other self that we're born to come in touch with, to open to, that really gives life meaning. Without that, we just are like little puppets. We're born, we're conditioned, we get our money, we get our food, we make our babies, and we die. That's it. So time is connected with emphasizing the outer self, the problem of time, to the exclusion of the inner self. Because when that inner self appears, even for a moment, it's a completely new sense of time. Mm-hmm. I am here. The present moment expands. There's no rush. There's no sense of, I've got to do this. But being fully present, time changes completely. You could say it's a little shadow of something eternal, if you like. You can call it timeless in the sense, but time is different. That is what the starvation of our culture is. The problem of time and the mystery of time are connected to what you might call the starvation for the present moment. We are starved for the present. We are hungry for it. We don't know it. And when it appears, yes, I see. I'm here. This is real. I become more loving. I become more intelligent. I become quieter in a dynamic way. I become more closer to what I am. And then it disappears because we're not used to it. And there are aspects of this which are very, very interesting, which psychologists have studied. I know it's a kind of a strange thing, but for example, many of us have been close to a fatal or dangerous car accident. You're driving along the road and suddenly a truck has shifted its lanes, or a car has shifted a lane and it's coming right at you. You have, by clock time, maybe 2 seconds to react, or you're dead. Well, suddenly, you start doing just the right thing. Something appears, and I'm here now, and it's as though I see my functions operating perfectly. It turns the wheel just in time. Maybe the car turns over. I'm in the car turning over, but the part that's just appeared is not frightened at all. There may be somebody else who's a little frightened at that moment, but I'm there, and I'll never forget that moment. That's the moment. And then maybe after rolling over once and you've missed the car, you've behaved perfectly for 2 or 3 seconds, then maybe afterwards, 4 or 5 minutes, you start thinking about what happened. You're scared to death. At that point, you say, oh my God. But in that moment, you existed in a way you never. Now, what would it be like to be like that in your life more? That is where these moments, and that maybe is a very dramatic moment, but there are other moments with love, looking into the eyes of the beloved, and also just in fact getting off the boat or a plane in a new country, and you're walking around and you're suddenly, well, I'm here, I'm really here. Those moments show us, they're not interpreted very well in ours at all. Those moments are like messages from some place deep, some timeless place within ourselves. They're messages in a way that say, here's who you are. Try to cultivate, try to let me in more. Try to let me into your life, your real self. But that's an aspect of this too. Like if you were under hypnosis, somebody put you under a hypnotic trance and told you you were, I don't know, one of the Three Musketeers or something, or Barry Bonds or whatever, whatever. And you started acting, talking, and talking about, reminiscing about your time when you hit 74 home runs or something, or when you were fighting with George Washington at Valley Forge, whatever, you were hypnotized into thinking, feeling. And then you snapped out of it. Oh, here I am. This is who I am. Of course, I don't know how it happened that I was just thinking, I felt I was like General Lafayette next to George Washington, or I thought I was Joe DiMaggio or whatever, Marilyn Monroe. And now I see I'm just me. I'm me. And you wake up from a dream, and in the dream you were running for president or something, and now you wake up and, oh, I'm here. So we could say at that moment in the dream and in the hypnosis you had forgotten who you were. Now, when you get swallowed, shall we say, by all the cravings, all the things that you want to do, that you have to do, you absolutely have to get this done. Every time maybe you get hurt, your feelings get hurt, or maybe you get angry, maybe you get sentimental, maybe and all those feel like you at the moment. And maybe something like what we were talking about, maybe your mother walks in with cookies when you're a child or something, and you've been playing with your toys, and suddenly, for some reason, you feel, I'm here. I remember myself when I was, this is a bit later on, but when I was about, I don't know what I was, about 12 or maybe 9, walking down the street just as a kid, skipping along, and I was walking down, and I remember the beautiful autumn leaves, and suddenly I realized, I'm here, I'm me, I'm Jerry, I am here. And I looked around, so isn't that interesting? I exist. And I see that was me, it was really more I than all the other things I was doing. Then I go back and I walk along and I forget that. I'm lost. Another sense of identity has appeared. And it feels fine that everybody says that's me, that's what people live by. They don't recognize this other thing at all. Or if they do, they make it into something fantastic, something phenomenal, something rather imaginary, the dream of being godlike or something of that kind. And that's a whole other question. How much of this kind of talk that I'm speaking about now, how much of it is really based on reality, and how much of it is based, at the very best, on an idea that I believe in, rather than something I actually taste and experience. That's a whole different question. So, but we're in a world where ideas and concepts and thoughts, our worldview, our view of what a human being is, our view of what's important, our view of how the world grows, of how life appears on Earth. Everything is evolution, for example. Everything is neuroanatomy. Everything is genetic code. Everything is physical basis of reality. Everything is manipulable, every scientifically knowable. That's taken to be implicitly or explicitly. That's what things really are. Or in the social field, everything is financial, is money, is bottom line. That's real, bottom line. Yeah, everything is like that so much in our society, if you know what I'm saying. But then I read a philosophy book, say, or I see a certain film, or listen to a certain kind of music, and then it's like a call from another world. Philosophy, which is my specialty, is really, real philosophy, if I can call it that, is meant to remind us of who we are, really. We're part of a very big universe. It's not just quantitatively large, but it's a universe of purpose and meaning. And it's meant to help us begin to remember who we are, what a human being is, or at least to deeply open that question. And then the question appears, well then who really are we? What do we, and the term sometimes uses remembering oneself, but what are we? What are we meant to be? What is a human being on earth supposed to do, supposed to be? Is he supposed to be what we said, eat, drink, breakfast, lunch, dinner, children, and that's it, and you die? Or is there something else? Because a human being is so extraordinarily created. It's so extraordinarily organized in a completely different plan than the animals and the plants, great as they are. And that question, to be open that question, to really open it and not just go into all the reduction into biology and economics and all these things, which is so knee-jerk kind of thing going on. To open that question, that's what philosophy does. And when a question like that is really opened, time is a whole different meaning. Is something really in us that is timeless, that is, you could say, immortal, but that makes it sometimes immortality is like lots of linear time. And that's not what the immortality really means. Timelessness, that means now it's not conditioned by the passage of time. Now, what then is the human being supposed to be? So, in my view, and I think it's been taught for centuries, but who understands how to do it? A human being is meant to be a much different kind of person, being, than we are. It meant, put it in very simple words, a human being is meant to serve a higher purpose. It's meant to serve, meant to give, meant to help, meant to be part of what is noble in the universe. I can put it in other language, which may sound sentimental, but the human being is meant to be able to love, not as we usually love, which is just satisfying our desires, which are very good, but a human being is meant to care in a way that comes from another level, from the real I. I see that I don't have any time in my life. Usually I'm rushing from one thing to another. But what I'm beginning to realize, and is part of that book, is my emotions that are taking my time away from me. For example, my fears, my neuroses, my imagination, my worries, my jealousies, my need to fix something up that isn't broken. For example, somebody says, I hear that somebody has spoken ill of me. I start imagining all sorts of things. I want to, why did I say that, or did I do something wrong, or and I said I better take care of that. So I have to try to find a way to see what happened. If I'm lucky, I'll try to find the facts first. But usually, one just reacts and says, I'm never going to talk to that guy again. Or you start saying things or doing things that cause all kinds of difficulties, and which you then have to repair further, and you come to the end of the day. You've lost several hours, and it's still not fixed. So finally it fixes. It turns out it was nothing special at all. It was reported wrong. It was my imagination. It was the guy who reported it didn't like the guy to begin with, and it was all an interaction of stupid emotions, that is, egoistic reactivity, that interplayed, interconnected with each other, and at the end of the day, it turns out it was big nothing, and you've turned out your guts on the damn thing for several hours. How many times has this happened? Every day, practically, or every third day, one is taking care of things which are just the creation of emotional reactivity that really have no existence, really, at all. So we live in this, the earth itself. This is what's so strange, is that the earth, nations destroy other nations because of hurt feelings, because of emotions, because of cravings, because of fanaticisms. It's emotions that are the most dangerous thing on this planet. You know, look at what's happening now. You have people with a certain kind of relationship to their religion, ready to kill half the world for it, and the other half also ready to, in its own way, kill. This is emotion. And so that kind of emotion is very destructive, and that destroys time. Little things, too. Little things. Then, I had an aim to do something down in my office. I see a magazine. I'm lost. Oh, that's interesting. It's not interesting. Why am I spending all that time looking at the damn magazine? It's entertaining. So entertainment is a thief of time also. But I think it's interesting. I think it's important that I know that the penguins are in trouble or something like that. I read all about it suddenly. Do I give my attention to things which really aren't that important for me? It's that interesting. And therefore, the waste of time is the waste of attention. My emotion takes my attention. Now, the attention is the most uniquely human characteristic we have. It's higher and deeper than what we call the mind and the feelings. It's what we have that's really our own. What we give our attention to is what we become. Now, that doesn't mean, this is not a puritanical view that like Benjamin Franklin or somebody says everything you do has to serve a practical purpose. Not at all. There are times when you have to just let it go. You just let your brain go. You let your heart go. You just have fun. But we've made, for example, fun practically as a world principle for many people. Is it fun? We'll do it. Well, fun is pleasant, but is man put on earth to have fun? Is he put on earth to not have fun? No. Fun is a part of it. Pleasure is a part of life. But it's out of balance. So, to say that the thieves of time, I could list almost anything my eyes fall on, eats my time up because I get attached to it, for example. So there's countless examples of thieves of time. So what's the answer to that? It's the state of consciousness that's the problem. When in the state of consciousness of our ordinary lives, we are constantly being distracted by 1,000 things in this world. Where do all these magazines living in? We're drowning in magazines, for example. We're drowning in these things I go to my dentist, which I do unfortunately all too often, and I'm sitting in the waiting room where there are tons of magazines, and I'm told, come in to the dentist's office and sit in the chair. He'll be with you in a few minutes. Here's a magazine. I don't need a damn magazine. What am I supposed to? Am I constantly being taken by the outside, stimulated? So we have no inner life. That's why there's so many thieves of time. people think, I sometimes give my class a little assignment. I say, sit down in a chair sometime this week, just sit in the chair. Don't watch television, don't fall asleep, don't read a book, don't smoke anything, just sit there. Try to do it for, say, 5 minutes. Don't dream, try not to dream, try not to just daydream. Just sit in a chair for 5 or 10 minutes. It's practically a torture for many people. One of the Zen koans is, what is the face you had before your mother met your father? And so, what is your unconditioned self, your unconditioned I, nature, whatever, consciousness? Everything else is conditioned. Everything else in us is given to us. Our body is given. Our thoughts we get from our parents, our education, our media, our environment, our opinions. We are given in a way. We don't really think actively about them very much usually. Our sexual life is sort of programmed into us. We have that, it's given. And we go about our life. Nothing is really our own. It's been given to us. I was born with it. I didn't make my body. I didn't choose my being sexual, or male or female or whatever. I didn't even choose my opinions when you really come down to it. I somehow adopted them passively or something. My interests, where did they come from? But there's one thing that is my own nature, and that's what this is. The original face is a symbol of that. That's something which we call I, really I, not the socially conditioned I that we're talking about, but my attention is my own thing. The only thing in a human being that is truly my own, that is not conditioned, is this quality called attention. What I give my attention to is truly voluntary. So it seems not sometimes it's being tried, but if I really try to look at myself and look at this thing called attention, I have a choice there of giving it to you or to give it to him. So I think it's in that direction is the original face. And that is not subject to the kind of time that everything else is subject to. It again takes us back to this question of presence, to be present, to be in the now. Every day now people are talking about the now. It's a big fashionable thing, and it's definitely a piece of a great truth, but it's only a piece. And the now is sometimes taken as rather limited, and it's just now here, but it's a much bigger thing than I think people realize, even from reading good books. So the original face is connected with all those things. It's connected to the question, who am I? Who is this being that calls itself by my name? Who am I? Am I Jerry? Am I Joe? Am I American? Am I woman, man? All those things, yes, but who am I? And that question is what I call one of the great questions of the heart, the great human question. When that question is asked as a mental puzzle, it's not very interesting, it doesn't do much. But when it's a question of your heart and of your whole being, who am I? I often think of these, from this kind of question, of this very common phenomenon of people who are very successful or very subject of great adoration, or very movie stars, big movie stars, or athletes, or great political figures. How difficult it is for them to realize, to think that people are loving me, attracted to me because I have money, because I'm sexy looking, because I have a reputation, because I'm a good baseball player. And they're creating a phantom, and I'm falling for it. And I have to live up to that. And it causes great unhappiness, I think, to someone like a movie star, like a Marilyn Monroe or something, and who plays the part and looks the part of a alluring person, and that people love the image of her, the screen image. But she must have felt, does anybody love me? And then say people who are very wealthy, for example, people who are very, very, very wealthy, very rich people come very soon to realize that it's very hard to have a friend, because most of the people who are my friends have hoping to get some money from me, get something out of me. So they stay with their own rich friends who each have that problem in a way. Not everybody. I know many people of great wealth who are not so much like that, but you know how it is. And it's true, we have an image that we have tried to cultivate ourselves, and it's been put upon us too. The professor, to this kind of thing, you're the director, you're the movie star, I'm the authority. There's an image that goes very deep in us, which we're constantly looking around to protect it. Don't come near that, don't threaten that. I mustn't lose that image. Now, at the same time, there's a despair. That, who am I? People don't love me. They just love my image. They like me. They respect my image. And many of us go through that without really questioning it. But then we suffer like hell. But we don't really question it because we're constantly trying to affirm the image. And anybody that comes near threatening it, watch out. And even a little bit of hint of that, and I'm on my guard to protect that image. But then, as we say, these moments appear. Death. My father dies. My mother dies. I appear. In the moment of grief, deep grief. My mother has died. My father has died. I have now appeared. It's not negative. It's sorrow in that case. It's not emotional. It's not egoistic. It's a sorrow that is deep hurt, but I'm in touch with my real I. I really am. Now that turns later into fear and into self-pity and into regret and resentment and all kinds of bad emotions, but for a short or long period, in the moments of grief, and sometimes it lasts for weeks and months, in the moments of grief, I have appeared. Nobody can piss me off. Nobody can disturb me. Nobody can ask something too big or too little of me. I'm not afraid of the world. I'm not afraid. I'm capable of love. I'm capable of impartiality. That's remembering. Now, when the earthquake struck in, what was it, 1989? Yeah, maybe it was 1989. In San Francisco, we all got literally shaken and emotionally shaken. And I remember sitting in the chair, being thrown off the chair and trying staggering around while the thing was shaking. Everybody suddenly realized that the earth is moving and it's not stable and nothing is stable. Everything can be taken away. It was a tremendous shock and 99% of the people in San Francisco after that, for days, were walking around kind and friendly and open, not in a hurry, opening doors, being gracious. They really were there, so they were remembering who they are. They were no longer their image. They were no longer that. Slowly, after a day or a couple days, the, the image started coming back again, and they started being nasty and selfish, etc. So it doesn't last. But when you get shaken like that, you appear. And like as they say, the image can be broken in many ways. When you risk your life to save another person, you don't even know that you did that. You just threw yourself in front of the person in order to protect her or something. And did I do that? That was more like me. That was more me than all the other things. So it shows us that underneath this complicated image, there's someone who doesn't, who just wishes the good. Someone who cares. Someone who's not naive. It's not naive. Because you know at that point, you know sometimes you have to be clever. Sometimes you have to be smart. Sometimes you have to be tough. It's not sentimental, this thing. Sometimes you have to knock someone down, but you do it without personal image resentment. You can real hate is a property of a real human being as well as real love. To really hate what is really evil, not what I imagined and what scares me. So all of these are implicated in this question of remembering. And sometimes we are so touched by those moments we ask ourselves, how could I live more in relation to those things? The only really good questions are the unanswerable ones. Theoretically, our sense of self is, our usual sense of self is basically a lie. It's deep down, it's something pretense. There's something that we're hiding. There's a wound of some kind in us that we're protecting, something like that. I think for many of us have a wound that was inflicted upon us emotionally when we were very young. And this image forms around it in order to protect it from being further wounded or imaged or injured. Sometimes it's caused by our parents or one thing or a trauma of one thing or another. And this image, or what you might call personality if you like, forms to protect it. And it's not me, but it protects me because this thing is there, hurts. And the protection takes all my energy, really. I'm constantly trying to make sure that it doesn't get exposed or hurt, this wound doesn't get touched. And if it does, then all the forces rush in to readjust to the ego, defends itself, reestablishes itself. And that's part of ordinary mental health. Otherwise, we'd walk around and we'd be basket cases walking around all the time. Because it's always some people are more touchy and sometimes less, but most of us are pretty damned sensitive. You hear the first letter of your name said 10 feet away from you and suddenly you're there. This image person, this ego is so sensitive. So this image or ego or personality, which sometimes serves a very good purpose and mustn't be destroyed, is trying to do something in our lives. It's been given a job to do, or it's taken on a job to do that it is constitutionally unable to do. It's taken on the job of making us feel safe, making us strong, protecting us, trying to care for other people, to love another person. It's trying to make us really intelligent, to have knowledge and understanding. But the knowledge, understanding, and the love that is generated by the image, or the personality, or the ego, is not fundamentally sound. It's not meant to be the master. And the body doesn't know any better. I mean, the ego sometimes just pushes on the body and says, you must be like this, you must do that. or it indulges the body. It says, here's a nice thing for you, and it gets lots of pleasure and things. The body itself understands somewhere that this is a false master. It's trying to do something in our life that can only be done by the real I. The true I, the true self, when it appears, everything obeys it, everything respects it. The body recognizes, here's the boss, here's the master. I will obey that person. I will obey that being. The personality is trying to do the work that the real I should do. But the real I is hidden. So the personality is always trying to do these things, and we spend our time trying to accomplish all that. And sometimes we succeed, we become famous, we become successful, we become the star. But behind it all, there's, for most people who are at all sensitive, behind it all there's a haunting despair. I am not really, it's not really mine, it's not really me. And it's very clear for many successful people, of different kinds, of course, and all kinds of people. If you just, they're constantly looking for affirmation of the image. And if you don't affirm the image, they're frightened and they hate. You can really get, and there are people who have to be affirmed all the time. No matter what, I'm looking for this affirmation all the time from you, from her, and one way or the other, whatever I say or do, it maybe sound like it's an impartial or noble thing, is always, I'm looking, am I to get affirmed? And that takes my time, that takes time. When the real self appears, it doesn't need that, it doesn't feed on that. It wants to give, and the whole organism serves it. So I'm putting things in a very black and white way, but that principle is there. The lie does not want to be exposed. But when the real self appears, the personality very often can relax and say, yes, okay, you're. I'm making it dramatic, but it is. It's an extremely dramatic situation that we are in, because we are meant to be something so much greater than we think. The ego wants consciousness, it wants safety, it wants pleasure, it wants affirmation, all that it can get from the real self. It doesn't know that. How could it know that? And that's true in all traditions. Each tradition has that inner side to it. Christianity, I can show you texts, it's the same thing. Judaism, yes. Not maybe the Judaism and the Christianity that we're familiar with. Hinduism, we all know about it to the point where it's a cliche nowadays in certain circles, the true self, the Atman, the Buddha nature, all this things that people are sometimes talk very meaningfully about and are practicing it, and sometimes it's just an idea that circulates that actually covers over the truth. So sometimes one needs an entirely new expression of this so that it has no echoes of the past in it. And that's what some of the great spiritual innovators have done. It's never been that they've invented a new teaching. They've rediscovered a new way to make the old truth available. The question about time, the relation between our ordinary life, our ordinary time, and this timelessness, where we're free from the aggressive, the predatory kind of time, which we usually have. The relationship between those two, the ordinary mind cannot really understand it, cannot understand when this other time appears. And the only answer to the problem, the question about time that is asked by us ordinary, poor, ordinary mortals, is the answer is not in words, it's in the experience of some timeless quality in ourselves. An answer is given not in words, but in experience. When you begin to have that kind of experience more and more, or even once sometimes, you know the answer. You know what this timelessness is. And you can put it into words and poetry and mystical language and so forth. Even the word timelessness is maybe sometimes just a label. You know that something is there, is given to you, that is different, has transformed you, has given meaning to your life. This is meaning that has appeared. So again, I can say all kinds of things about the cells in the brain are activated that I've never used usually, I've never come in, or you can express it in all kinds of God has entered into the mind. Different religions have said it different ways. The Buddhists say it in another way. So what I'm saying is that there are questions that can only be answered by experience. And so the next question would be, how can we work for the experience of this timeless being? And that's a question of what is a genuine inner discipline? What is a genuine inner work? I think that's a very central question. How to live one's life so that when I'm more at the disposal of these moments that can enter into our life. And there is a work toward that. There is a way. It requires help from people who have come along that way more. It requires other people who want to share the work with you, share the way, and you can express your difficulties and what you have understood and verify it with others. So you begin to, first of all, now to need what I call philosophical friends. People who have the same kind of interests, who have this kind of attraction to something beyond the world of appearances, beyond the world of breakfast, lunch, dinner, money, children. People who have that yearning that Plato called eros, which is almost a nameless impulse to connect to something greater, not in a sentimental religious sense of any kind, but to just know somewhere this can't be all there is it? And when you have friends like that and you come together with them, sometimes it attracts people who can help you. Because the people who can help exist, I'm quite sure of that. And they're waiting to find the people that they can help. There's a very beautiful passage in the Buddhist scriptures called The Day in the Life of the Buddha. And he describes how he lives, goes through his day, and then it describes how he goes to bed and he goes to sleep. And it says something like he prepares himself for sleep, prepares himself to lie down in the special Buddhist lion's posture, I think it's called, of sleep on his right side. But before he lies down to sleep, it said he casts his Buddha eye around the world to see who has the great wish, and he draws that person toward him. And so there are beings out there who are trying. If you have the wish, there are people there who are trying to help. Not the false gurus, not the charlatans, not the people who imagine they're able to do this, but the real ones. And how we can distinguish between them cannot be explained. It has to do with something in the heart. But you can find people who are interested, and then there'll be things become clear. If I were to say rules and principles of how to do it, it would maybe be good for a day or two, but It needs something much more sustained. This is not just a mystical experience which suddenly transforms your life and everything is meaningful. That's a New Age fantasy. It takes hard work and serious intent and understanding and a critical mind, which is very important. A normal, everyday, critical mind that's ready to say, I don't know, what you're saying sounds interesting, but I need more evidence. Not show me, but not to be gullible. This is relevant to all we've been talking about, because the two enemies of finding help are gullibility and cynicism. They're two sides of one coin. The cynic doesn't believe anything is possible, anything is good. The gullible one believes everything he hears. So as my old teacher used to say, it's important to have an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out.